Okay, hello and welcome everyone. Great, today I'd like to get into more great details about knowing the fretboard and understanding what the concept of key, major and minor key. Oh, hello. What is the concept of key in relation to what we do with the guitar? Uh, and how to get to know the fretboard a little bit better. So we start with a very basic concept, something that we are most familiar sonically in music, in Western music, is the major scale. It's like a reference point for pretty much everything that we use. If you want to define any other sound, any other tonality, it's usually the first spot to compare it to the major scale. Uh, and as is the case with all the model scales and alter scales and every other set of notes that we usually think of as a certain tonality. And that's why I believe that understanding and mastering the major scale is quite essential. And at the same time, it's not as hard as it might seem, because the concept to practice and to understand it seems a bit overwhelming. What we're aiming for is to be able to play major scale across at least 2 octaves from every finger, which really comes down to 3 positions per every finger, as long as we play 3 notes per string. So it's not that hard. But before we start, I just want to be sure that we understand what major scale incorporates, what makes it the major scale. And basically, we're looking for something, for a run of notes in order that has half step between third and fourth and seventh and eighth step. So if we look at the fretboard and I play major scale from C to C, and we look at the intervals that come into play, we have whole step, half step. So these are first notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Between third and fourth we have half step. Then and between the last note and the one before we have half step. So whole, half, whole, half, and that's all there is to it really. To obtain major scale from any note on the fretboard, all we need to do is keep those half steps in the same relation to the first note. So between third and fourth and seventh and eighth, there's going to be a little shorter distance, right? So because on the guitar we have strings tuned in certain intervals, most of them are fourth, with exception of second and third string, which is major third. We'll get certain patterns that tend to repeat themselves depending on where we play in the neck. We'll start to see certain shapes that help us memorize these half steps and the skips between the steps. So as a good starting point, I want to start here on low C, 3rd fret, 5th string, and this is my first whole step. Then I want to play whole step, but because I run out of fingers, I have 2nd fret on D string, half step, because this is my 3rd to 4th step, whole step on 5th fret, 2nd fret on G string, whole step, and this is my first octave. Let's just pay attention to where the interval of minor second, the half step is, because this is like a crucial point that will make everything work further as we shift to other keys. In the key of C major, these half steps, these natural half tones, they are between E and F, and B natural and C. So it's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So this shape of major scale, of course, will stay unaltered. Whenever we start on any note on the fifth string, it will result in a sound of major scale. So now, starting on C, it sounds like C. Starting on E flat, it still sounds like major. Of course, it's in a different key at that point. But I want to have a look at another thing. At the idea of circle of fifth that as such doesn't really help anything, because again it's like a theoretical concept that shows how the keys progress. But if we have a look at the note names and how they change with the change of the key, it might be a little bit clearer why is it so. Okay, so this is my C major. I'll spell the notes: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now let's have a look at one thing. If I play this C major scale up a fifth, so 5 steps up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is going to be G. So let's play it here just to keep the shape unaltered on 10th fret. Okay, now the notes are G, A, B, C, D, E, and here's the first change, because I want to have a half step between the last note and the one before, so note F won't really fit. It's good, but it's not the sound I'm looking for. I want to have a major scale. So from that point, instead of F, I have F sharp to keep the structure of the intervals within the major scale, well, according to the construction of the scale, right? So half step between third and fourth, and 7 and 8. So 1, 2, half step and half step. Okay, so all the notes in G major are the same apart from the 7th step that right now is F sharp instead of F. And as we move up to another key, this F sharp will be inherited by all the others. So past G major, all the other major keys that uses sharps will have F sharp in them. So if we see any F sharp in any melody, we can assume that, well, possibly this is not C major. It went somewhere to the different key, right? Let's have a look at the next one. Going from the G up a fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be D. G, A, B, C, D. So next major key is going to be D major. Let's have a look at it. As we remember, right now all F's will turn into F sharps. So D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and now I would have C in C major, but to have my half step in between last two notes, it has to change to C sharp. So it's D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. Now we have two notes that are different from our C major that we started on, right? We have F sharp and C sharp. And now, up until next key that we're going to move to, up a fifth, these two will stay. We'll carry on all the changes that happened as we moved up a fifth to keep the major scale major. E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. Okay. Now as we are in the key of D, let's see what's the next key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth step is A, D, E, F sharp, G, A. Okay, let's play A major and let's see what notes stay, what new notes gonna pop in, and what are the changes. So it's A, B, C sharp, that we inherited from the key of D major, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A. And now we can see the pattern that usually it's the seventh step that is being raised up a half step to accommodate the major scale, right? A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. All right. So we are already at the point where we have three sharps in our key. There was F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. So whenever we have a melody that incorporates those three notes somewhere, it's a very good chance that the notes that are being used are coming from the pool of A major key. We'll also talk at some point about the modes and other possibilities that might also show how it is, but in most of the cases, that's how it's going to work. Let's move on to another key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth step of A is E, so now we're in E major. So we have E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, and E. So right now we have four sharps: F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. So we're in key with four accidentals: E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B natural, C sharp, D sharp, E. Okay. Now let's have a look at another key, and it's getting hairy a little bit because we have more and more notes that are outside of the C major that we started on, right? So we already have 4 out of 7 notes that are raised, so there's less and less original C major notes in here. Okay, next key is gonna be B natural major. My dogs. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. B natural, B major. We'll have 5 sharps in these keys. So we're running out of nice, pleasant, ordinary notes of C major. Okay. B major scale. B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, and watch out, you don't see this too often. A sharp and B. Why is it A sharp that you rarely see A sharp chord, A sharp major chord, or A sharp minor? But here, because we are raising A up a step, it's A sharp. We're not flattening the B. It's not B flat, although usually when we refer to this note, the first thought is, well, this thing is B flat, of course it's B flat. This is B flat chord, this is B flat chord, this is my B flat note. Well, in this context, when we spell the scale, we're doing the right thing. We're raising the notes of C major up a half step. So this A becomes A sharp. So B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B natural. So as we can see, these additional sharps come from a rule that we want to keep our intervals at the fixed places against the first note that we start on. Okay, let's do two more majors. We're not that far. So fifth step of major is F sharp. So now we're in F sharp major. And I'm using the same shape just to see that it stays constant. And right now, I can memorize this shape and just work with my mind to remember how to spell the notes to know what notes are there. So let's go ahead with F sharp major. F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, and here's the surprise, E sharp, F sharp. Why E sharp and not F? Well, because F is long gone. F is already out the window once we move to G major. Right now we're raising E half a step up because we want to have a half step between last note and the one before, right? So this is E sharp and F sharp. And of course there might be people everywhere saying, oh, there's no such thing as F sharp, blah 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 blah. Well, that's what it is. That's how we teach it in theory classes, and this is the clear way to see where it's coming from. This is E that's been raised up a half step. It also works the same way in the notation. If we put the notes on the staff, we'll have the accidentals right next to the treble clef, and we have on the field that makes the note E, we'll have a sharpening there, which shows that we want to sharpen all the E notes up a half step. So for this particular idea of explaining what the majors are, we'll use proper names just to see how this concept applies to the actual scale. And what is also important, the shape obviously stays the same, and the note names underneath, they shuffle around and they do all this madness that is basically screwing our heads when we want to think about that. But I'll get there how to be more comfortable with that. Okay, let's have a look at the F sharp one more time. F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, and F sharp. Okay, now if we look at the set of notes that we have, and we already have 6 sharps for 7 notes. Almost everything in this scale is raised up a step. So what possibly could be the next one? Even without checking, I can assume that the next major scale most probably is going to be C sharp major, because even the name implies that C sharp is like C major, but it's half step up. So to keep the structure of major scale, it means that C sharp will have everything, every single note, all 7 of them, raised up the half step. So C sharp is quite easy to spell. It's like spelling the C major, but with everything sharp. Okay, let's have a look whether, I told the truth or not. From F sharp, 5 steps up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. C sharp. Well, looks good so far. Okay, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, and C sharp. So, where am I? Well, I'm just half step where I started. This is my C major, this is my C sharp major. Okay, so now we see where these sharps are coming from. They're coming from the process of following the scale, following the intervals that major scale is being built upon. Now, the hard task, the hardest idea and most time consuming is to learn all these keys that we just came across, beginning with every finger on every possible note on the guitar neck. And we're halfway there because I just covered the sharp keys. We didn't look at the flat keys, but the principle is pretty much the same. But now we'll look down the fifth, and I'll just quickly run through flat keys just to see where they're coming from. Okay, this is my C, this is my C, and we're going 5 steps down, 4, 5. Okay, first flat key is gonna be F major. F major. And what's going on in there? F, G, A, B flat. Okay, B flat, C, D, E, F. F is the first key that has something different than C major, and it's a B flat note. And as we see the pattern with the previous scales, this B flat is gonna drag along the way, possibly all the way down to C flat, which is not seen too often. But just to work out the concept up to a certain practical point, there's my F major, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. Okay, down the fifth. Okay, what a surprise. B flat. B flat major is going to be my next major scale. We can assume, because this is the pattern, that next major key is going to be the same name as the note that has changed in the previous flat key. The B flat was the first new note that we got in the F, and it points towards next key, which is B flat, right? Okay, let's see what's going on in there. B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B. Okay, so we have B flat and E flat, two flats that are new notes compared to the C major we started with. Okay, what's going to be the next key? Well, you guessed it, it's going to be E flat. E flat, C, G, A flat, B, C, D, E flat. E flat, F, G, A flat, our new note, B flat, C, D, E flat. Okay, so, and so on and so forth. We're adding one note every time. Every new flat points us towards the next key. Now, what are the concepts to practice this and to get the fretboard to know a little better? First of all, is working out fingerings across one octave. We are aiming for 3 notes per string where practical, and we'll try to get the same sounds at all times, starting with C major. Now, I'm aware that this is not the best example for one reason. If I start with my index finger, my first finger, and we'll have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. This is my first fingering, starting with index finger on 3rd fret. So it's whole step, whole step, whole step, high ed, next string, 4th string, whole step, whole step, whole step. Now, next string, we'll have just 2 notes. Okay, so for C major, I'm just following the dots on the fretboard. It's good to remember I'm just following the notes, the dots on the fretboard. Dots point onto the diatonic major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, and then there's a in between and C. Now we can use what we already know about the major scale, that the last note and the one before is a small distance. It's just the distance of one fret, right? So if we go 1, 2, now it's gonna be just the note that we want to end on and the one before that is in a closed distance, right? And what points towards the last note is the shape of the octave. So in this case, 3rd and 5th fret on 5th and 3rd string. So this is my octave. This is the same note up 8 steps. So whenever I have a C and I want to get the note that is also C but up an octave, I'll just use this shape, right? Or for the time being, any note up an octave will follow the same shape on 5th and 6th string. So if this is my G, this is my G. If this is my B flat, this is my B flat. If this is my E flat, this is my E flat also. Okay, so just trying to visualize this octave shape, that when I start here, one string, one fret, one break of one string, and one fret further, this is my last note. Okay, so dots, 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 dots. Okay, here's my last note and the one before and the last note. Okay, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. All right, so this is the fingering for index finger starting on the C. Here on 3rd fret. Now let's try to play the same thing but using different fingering, and we're starting with middle finger. And we're back to the first major scale shape that I used to show how the circle of 5th and how the accidentals, how the chromatic notes appear in the major keys. Same thing. In this case, we can see the half step here and half step here. Well, it didn't go anywhere. It's just with different fingers right now. And now we'll shift back and forth between the two. Of course, take your time. I just don't want to spend 3 hours showing the same thing around here. It's meant to be practiced slowly, ideally with singing the notes and their names, just to build the connection between our hearing brain that hears and our hands that execute the ideas. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay, so we got those two covered. Now, what about ring finger and pinky around here? Well, we're in the open position, unfortunately, so we'll be trapped by the open strings. And this makes this particular example of C major not really usable, because as it uses open strings, it's not really movable. And it also screws up the fingering, because usually we would start with pinky, but now we're starting with a ring finger because we don't need that many fingers, because we have a nut and open strings and yada yada and so on. It'll be better once we move to D major, because it's going to be a bit clearer. We'll have the possibility to play to play this fingering properly, starting with pinky. Why not ring finger? Because we're playing 3 notes per string, and there is no way to shift those fingers. There's no need for that. Basically, once we play 3 notes per string, it's actually like having three usable fingers depending on the intervals that we play. So sometimes if we have a half step, it's going to be better to use ring finger and pinky. Sometimes this half step might be somewhere in here, but in general we're dealing with 3 with 3 shapes per string. So it might be either whole step, it might be half step, whole step, or it may be whole step, half step. And that's all there is to it. Even if there are 2 notes per string, it usually means that to the left or to the right there's a half step somewhere, right? For example, starting here, we're starting with 2 notes, but the note from the major scale, B natural, is just half step down, so it's actually the shape of half step, whole step. Right. So it's like for this particular fingering, the one that we started with, 3rd, 5th, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 2nd, 4th, 5th, it's like having the same shape repeated on 2 adjacent strings. Sometimes it sounds even better because we have 8 notes, which makes the rhythm a little bit easier to fit it in a nice 1 or 2 bars of 4/4. So it makes more sense just to add something to make it like easy to repeat, which we'll get into in a while. But still in C major now. We're moving to this was the first C that we started on. This is the second C on 8th fret, 6th string, and I'll start with my pinky. So we have 8th fret. Now I'm moving to the A string, 5th fret, whole step, half step. So it's 7th, 8th. Now my index finger on 5th fret of D string, whole step, and I end up on 3rd string, 5th fret on C. So this fingering looks like this. So this one also has a stretch in it. Okay, now let's review these 3. Starting with middle finger. The second one. Starting with pinky. Okay, so now we have quite a serious portion of fretboard covered. At least on the lower sounding strings. We'll build up another octave at some point. I already have this covered in a couple of videos about the fretboard knowledge. They are out there. All these examples are there with examples, but it only covers C major. So if anyone would like to review it or have it at a bit slower pace, it's there. But again, it covers just C major, which is like an entry point before we start to move to the other keys. Okay, so we ended up with the pattern that starts on pinky. Now we'll use middle finger. And this is exactly the same shape that we had in here. Why is it? Because we have the same intervals between strings. So the relationship between notes stays exactly the same. In relation to each other, the intervals have the same shapes, right? So we expect these notes at exactly the same places. Okay, next one with index finger. And this is exactly the same shape as in here. Okay, so we already have 2 shapes that work perfectly fine on both strings and cover quite a vast real estate of the fretboard. So we see that so far everything looks quite smoothly and there are equivalent patterns for major scales on those 2 strings. So we have the same shape. This is a good thing. And unfortunately, as we start playing the second octave above it, it's gonna get hairy a little bit because we'll have to break the shapes because of this major third in here between second and third string. But let's not spoil the fun so far. Okay, we're going to G major because we covered index finger, third, sorry, middle finger. Here we covered index, middle, and pinky. So these are all three options that we have in here, and two in here. Once we move to D major, there's going to be one extra pattern that's gonna actually take some of the fun and clarity out of the picture. But okay, before I get ahead of myself, let's get to the G major in here. And again, because we're very low on the neck and there is an open position looking at us, and we'll have just third finger and index finger. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Okay, same notes, starting with index finger. Exactly the same shapes as we had before, right? So these are stretchies. In terms of technique, I'm using index third, although maybe it would feel a bit more natural to go with a ring finger, but further up the scale, it's smoother to keep the index finger close to the fretboard, and we end up with logical order with fingers in this particular case. So I would recommend to play this wide stretch of whole step and whole step, started with index and middle finger. In terms of technique as such, I don't put much force at all. My hand is relaxed. I just point at the note that I wanted to play, and again I use weight of my forearm to put the weight on the note. So there's no strain anywhere in the palm, and there is not too much of a tension really in the forearm where it all happens, right? Oh, sorry. Okay. And again, this is my torture guitar. This is my practice guitar. 14 to 72 gauge string. The heaviest that you can practically put and tune up to standard tuning. So there's a plenty of tension in here, but again, it doesn't matter with this technique of light touch and doing the heavy lifting with just weight of the hand. Again, this is something that I stole from classical double bass players. That's how they roll. When they play the note, their hands look relaxed, and they have plenty of tension to fight against on the fingerboard of the double bass. So there's almost no movement in the finger. And thumb is there just for show. So I'm not squeezing anything between my thumb. Okay, so that was all, got a bit sidetracked, but I wanted to emphasize on that it's very relaxed. It doesn't doesn't require too much of force and effort to make these notes sound right. Okay, another position right now. This G, unfortunately, yes. Thumb supports the so there is no lateral movement, but again it's very gentle touch. I'm not pressing against the neck. If it's more because of the natural of the natural position of the hand. We have opposed thumb, and it helps. This is like a fulcrum. This is the point that that all the other fingers know where they are. The thumb is there for positioning, right? I mean, I know that if my thumb is in here, that these fingers, when they're spread, they're in particular places on the neck, but it doesn't really do any squeezing motion. Okay, because this is the only low G that we have on guitar. There's no other repeated note in here. The notes start repeating from this A, right? This A has an open string, and then we see these notes that are progressing and start repeating on the neck. But before that, this is our only G. So all the remaining fingerings will have to move to this G in here, up an octave on 10th fret. And let's start with pinky. Okay, this pattern has a little deviation from what we had with C major. So 10th fret, 7th, 9th, 10th. Now, whole step, whole step, whole step. So 7th, 9th, 11th. And the G is on the 2nd string on the 8th fret. Okay, now we're changing the fingering to the one starting with middle finger. And there's no change in here. Just like C major that we started with. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, F sharp, E, D, C, B, A, G. And it's going to be the same story when we want to start with index finger. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So, same thing, shape of the octave. Whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step. Then half step right before the last one. Okay, let's have a look at another key of D. That's the next one on the circle of fifth. So we had F sharp, that was our first flat. Then we'll have F sharp and C sharp, and we'll start with D. And we'll start with pinky. So it's D, E, oh, hello. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D. Okay, so our new two sharps. And here, what happened in here, because again, we encountered this muddy territory of having a major third in between strings. So right now, all the patterns that we used before, unfortunately, are broken down and are shifted. So when we start with pinky, 5th fret, 2nd on D string, 4th, 5th, 2nd fret on G string, 4th, and now 2nd string, 2nd fret, and half step, obviously, to play the last notes. nice thing about this fingering is that it's under the fingers. There are no stretches. I don't have to play whole step at any point. Okay, another shape. Starting with middle finger. Same old story, nothing surprising in here. Same as C major we started on. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. Okay? Same thing with index finger. Whole step, half step. So there are some exceptions to learn in here, but most of the fingerings repeat themselves depending on the set of strings that are spread over. But the concept of practicing and getting to know is to play it slowly and spell the notes, and in ideal situation, singing them. Again, to build the connection between musical mind and the executive apparatus. So now, what exercise I would recommend in all those keys is, after we are comfortable with spelling the notes of the scale, just playing the intervals of thirds, so skipping every other note. Let's do it in C major. C. Now I'm not playing D. I'm going straight to E. Then D, F, E, G, F, A, G, B, A, C, D, B, D, C. I'm adding one note above the octave just to have a musical resolution here. I don't want to cut the bar short. So we're actually aiming for sound. So I want to get this particular sound. I'm not thinking about the notes, I'm thinking about the melody that comes out. And this reassures me that if I play something wrong, I know what is wrong with that. So the concept is that I have a pattern starting on first note, third note, second note, fourth, third, fifth, fourth, sixth, fifth, seventh, sixth, then repeated on the octave, seventh, second octave above and back. So this little tail at the end looks like this. Okay, this is A, C, B, D, C. So we're already reaching for the next octave of this scale. And we do the same exercise with every fingering that we know. When we start with index finger, this ending, B, D, C, is very easy because we expect it to be there, half step, and then it's a whole step. So. Okay, and now starting with pinky on the 8th fret. Same story. Now, what's quite important to remember is that the process of discovering where these notes are and how they sound and all the mistakes that come along are very important, because we're building our own personal way of connection with the instrument. That's why I avoid putting it out as, okay, here is the top of the exercise, because you have a ready-made recipe. Okay, just press here, press here, press here, and suddenly you're missing the underlying the underlying idea that is there, which is getting to know where these notes are in the very, very basic, very natural, intuitive way, instead of memorizing where they are from a ready-made instruction set, which is notation tabs or diagrams. And this is also my idea of learning new chords, because I have very poor musical memory. I have terrible memory. So to memorize things, it's way easier for me to know where they're coming from, how they sound, and then I can recall and reproduce them on a guitar. And it's same with the chords. It's way easier to know the construction of chord and just build it on spot and make it work than trying to memorize some weird odd fingerings, because there is there's like a ready-made pattern that goes into completely different spot in my brain, and it's not understanding where it comes from. So suddenly it's very isolated. If I see the connection between the intervals and the sound, it's mine at that point. It's same with learning the tunes by ear. It's based on what I know, and if there's something new to incorporate, it comes from my understanding. No matter at which level I am, I can break it down to what I know, and then it's way more intuitive, and it gets incorporated into the musical vocabulary way easier than just memorizing fingering and basically relying on muscle memory. Unless our goal is just to play one song, or if you learn one song this way, you know one song, and it's anything that you might learn from the piece is not really recyclable. It's not incorporating. You're not incorporating it into your musical vocabulary. It's just a selection of instructions that are of a blues scale. And what they mean? Okay, blues scale. The thing with the blues scales is that there's not really one. It's more of an umbrella term for the scales that we use in blues, and there is again possibly the notion that there is like a blues scale to play the blues. It comes from the entry-level idea of, okay, here is your minor pentatonic, say A minor pentatonic, and if you play it over the blues in A, it's somehow gonna work. Okay, and all right, yeah, I'm gonna play blues solo. Nope. That's not how any of that works. Minor pentatonic, as such, works perfectly only in one case, and it's on 4 chord of the blues. So say we have 1 A, D7, now, the idea of having a minor pentatonic as a like a core blues scale comes from the concept of making it work over the blues progression. So, for example, if I have a 1 chord, which is A7, the notes that I have in here are A, C sharp, E, G, But in this voicing, I just have the essential elements. So I have A, G, and C sharp. These are called guide tones. Third and seventh. They're necessary to give us information that this is the dominant chord. This is A7, right? That it has a third that gives the major triad flavor against A, and seventh that implies that this is a dominant chord. Dominant chord, the one that is unstable, that wants to resolve. In short. For thumb picking, yes, in a second, I'll touch on that, yes. Okay, because right now I'm using flat picking. So, because we have C sharp in here, in this chord, minor pentatonic will sound tense. And it will sound like the player is not really listening to what's going on. So, if I have a one chord, my go-to sound would, if I want to put my money on minor pentatonic, it's going to be bending the C that's not in the chord closer to the C sharp that is in the chord. And this is the magic of the blues. These notes, the C sharp in here doesn't have to be spot on right on the pitch, because this is where the blues character lives. This is it's in between. It's not minor. It goes to the major, tries to resolve closer to the chord, but it's not spot on there. And this is a blues specific thing. I mean, we could go forever where these little inaccuracies are, but basically this is not a clear minor pentatonic. Sometimes what we see that is advertised as a blues scale is going to be something that starts on A, C, D, has a flat 5 in it, then it's fifth, well, okay, so we have blue notes in here, right? We have minor third, we have flat 5, we have seventh, we have 13s, we have 6, but as such in the blues phrases, these notes are not spelled in that order. I mean, they're coming from the harmony that drives them underneath. So I'd say that in most cases with blues phrases, we'll hear these notes either bent onto something that complies with the chord, or they're appearing as passing notes because of the bending. So say very short blues phrase. What does it contain? I play the minor. Well, the basis, what I have in my fingers, is minor pentatonic, but the pitches aren't, right? So I start. This is my flat 5, my blue note, down to D, which is fourth. Now I have C bent towards C sharp and A, and this is the phrase that is meant to work on A7. Right? It's not. It lives it lives in the in like world in between the pitches that we usually use, and something that that might be perceived as inaccuracies, but this is the how naturally the blues works, and I mean my attitude towards the blues music is you can't really analyze, learn, or as such teach these things because we got to this point in a very natural way. So it's also almost always about listening and trying to imitate what's been done on the record. Because originally there was no theory or some kind of concept behind there. I mean, it was 100% emotion, right? So we can break it down onto certain things, but I wouldn't rely as such on the idea of okay, this is the blues scale, this is what it does, because when I think about the popular ideas of having blues scales and then going, well, but as you can see, it doesn't work. It works only on one chord as such, and everything else is actually chordal. If I think about the blues phrases. I prefer to think in phrases and in sounds, and there isn't one single scale that I would oh, absolutely, of course. I mean, is it acceptable? It all comes down to who you're playing with, what the expectations are. I absolutely love chromatics. I absolutely love to put jazz bebop ideas into blues. I mean that's pretty much what jump blues style is. I mean it's a swinging music that was meant to be danceable, that had higher energy than a big band, but it was in a smaller group, and the players use this perfect blend of chromatics, blues vocabulary, but still very very close to the harmony. So. So it's almost like horn lines, horn solos. Yes, absolutely. I mean, of course, this also evolved into jump blues, and rockabilly guitar is pretty much, it's coming from the same clay really. Western string players, still the same thing. Chromatics playing very close to harmony and using the blues as a counterweight. So it's just I absolutely love this style because there's a huge, very broad palette of way of expressing musical ideas that you could do the dissonating tense blues phrases or something that is very mellow and very I'd say pleasant sounding, very maybe not ordinary, but as an elaborate line that is over the harmony that just makes things tick. So there's this this kind of blend, and yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, that's something that is also always been great to have a look into, and that's one of the things that I absolutely loved about Les Paul and Hank Garland, that they always had this kind of blend of flashiness in their playing, this spark, uh, but at the same time, it wasn't overwhelming with cleverness. There was no playing out of the harmony or some very tense tensions. It was about the melody and about playing very close to harmony. And this is like pinpointing where the right notes are is very clear with their playing. Uh, and yeah, that's one of these things. And coming back to the blues and the blues scale, because if we look at the oh, thank you, John. So the idea of scales in blues as such is a little bit, it's a little bit flawed concept, and usually what we want to learn are the blues phrases, the blues vocabulary, right? So you know, blues phrasing, call and response, this kind of thing. Unfortunately, there is no like one size fits all scale that is okay. Yeah, this is the thing that's going to work there. I mean, it's the minor pentatonic is a core sound, but it's not meant to be used at all situations. It's there, but it's always bent towards the chord. Uh, and there was this idea, oh, that because the blues comes from the primitive forms, and like primitive harmony 1 4 5, and it doesn't always follow it. That's absolutely not true. That when even when we listen to the earliest stuff, I mean, Biggle Brunsey, Robert Johnson, there is always harmony movement in the lines. B.B. King, if we listen just to the solo, it's so easy to tell what the chord is, and that's the key thing, to be able to play the line that very clearly outlines the harmony, right? So this is my one chord, still my one chord, and this. And my 5 chords. Back to 4. Right, so even if there is a C somewhere in my phrase over, I like to I like to think with motifs in in blues solos. Like, this is my idea, this is my call and a response, but like say my first, oh, thank you so much, really appreciate that, helps a lot. So say my first my first blues phrase for the one chord might go, we're in key of A. Okay, so uh, it's it derives from minor pentatonic, but it has this tiny little bend that suggests, okay, we're still on one chord. There's this C sharp. Then if the chord moves, the same phrase but without this tiny little bend will also work with the chord. So I just did this tiny little shift to outline, okay, something underneath has changed, but I want to have the same musical idea. I want to put this repetition. I want to I want to have this sort of validation of this phrase. My first phrase, my second phrase might have another motif. And back to the first one. And now there's a solution. There's a point to resolve and answer the questions that I deposit. So, in terms of structure, blues is difficult to play. Blues is difficult to explain. You can only feel it. You can listen and learn by listening, but that's possibly the toughest part of it all. Having like a vocabulary of phrases, you can learn phrases and put them as blocks together to make a good solo. But it's just so hard to explain. Simple primary style of music that is still really hard to be played in an authentic, convincing manner, because there is nothing that we can do to get a shortcut of 100 years of tradition, right? I mean, it just evolved. We can see where roughly the beginning was with the work songs, call and response, right? And then we can slowly progress and see how the guitar players incorporated these elements, and just using the guitar as a tiny band, tiny orchestra with harmonies and melodies. So that's the difficulty. I mean, I believe that it's really hard to be young and play the blues. I mean, there are guys that are brilliant, but yeah, that's again that's the magic. That's what it's all about. Just learning and being humble. To how natural, how extremely direct in terms of emotions is the blues. So yeah, I believe that it's a bit hard to explain. Okay, yeah, you see, this is the chord, this is the one chord, and this scale will work. Well, you can survive playing the blues using the scales that would naturally point towards the chord. Oh, absolutely, B.B. King, of course. I mean, I just never get tired of listening to B.B. King. Absolutely. I mean, every single blues player has something very unique to deliver, and that's brilliant. But say if a jazz player or pop musician sees A7 on the page with no other context, he will think, okay, chord notes, and chromatics, Mixolydian scale, but this is not blues. It doesn't sound like blues. played all the right notes for the chords that are there. It's nothing to do with blues. I mean, it's okay to do something like that as a counterweight, as some kind of extra flavor. But again, there was not a drop of blues in there. So yeah, that was the tough one, Ed. I must admit. I mean, unfortunately, I can't really help with the single thing. I mean, it's just listening to the emotional side of blues music and trying to grasp it. Okay, there was a question about the exercises with thumb pick, because I tried to fight the beast for a while, and what I found very useful, that as I touch at certain point, thumb pick is unfortunately not the substitute of a flat pick that is attached to the thumb. It doesn't behave the same way, no matter how hard we try. We don't get the same amount of control. We don't get that same the same sound. It is perfectly fine to alternate to do the alternate picking with it, but it begs for a completely different action of the wrist. Also, the sound is way harsher. We don't have that much of a control of the dynamics. So, what comes in handy is using the alternating fingering pattern between thumb and index finger. I'll put the camera at my. Oh, thank you so much, Ed. Okay, what I do in here? Just I hope it's not overexposed, that the strings will be visible. This is my substitute for flat picking, for alternate picking. I try to incorporate 3 fingers. In certain situations, but what I found the most useful when it comes to playing lines with thumb pick is the idea of using separate strings to spread the line across. So this is something that fingerpicking guitar players use at all times. This is something that basically fingerpicking was made for. Instead of playing the notes on the same string, or the strings that are close together, say this is my A major, although it's perfectly doable, we can spread the same note, say G major, over the open strings, and instead of picking on one string, which is a little bit hard because we have to work very tightly against the string, we can just roll, which is perfectly natural, right? Because we have separate. Okay, say this is my G major, and instead of playing on the same string, I know this more natural for the picking hand. What I do here on the fretboard, this is my 10th fret, A string G, on the 7th fret, On the 7th fret of 4th string I have A, open 2nd string, so right, this is my same shape, just 1 string down. So I have 6 notes of major scale covered, and I can just finish off here, 11th fret and 8th fret on the G string and B string. So I'm holding the same shape. I'm just. So this is one of the things that usually with finger picking guitar players we hear more of overlapping notes, which is a great sound. I mean, this is a brilliant sound. This is something that I absolutely love about this way of playing. There are some limiting factors. I mean, it's a little bit hard to pull it from the top of your head when you improvise. It requires some preparation, and also there are certain limitations to the guitar keys because we are hostages of the open strings at that point, right? So in the key, of A, open B, C sharp, D, E, D on the 7th fret, E on the open strings. So this is like the idea that requires some preparation, but it's perfect. Oh, C major is quite interesting from played with the bottom strings. So C, D, E, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So I have C on the 8th fret, open D, then this is my banjo roll here. Thumb, third finger, index on the 5th string. Then note F on 8th fret, open G, 7th fret with thumb, open 2nd string, thumb on the 10th fret, then a forward roll, C, D, E, F, G, A, if I want to. So, this is one useful pattern. This kind of run. It's also based on the rolls. It's in C major, F on the 6th fret, open 1st string, then it goes to C on the 5th fret, open 2nd string, A on the 7th fret, open G, F on the 8th fret, E, open D and C. So there are some interesting runs, and maybe I could have a we could also talk about the tunes that are built about around this concept of spreading the notes because they are fingerpicked, and two oh, thank you so much, Sean. It means a lot to me. If anyone finds stuff I'm showing helpful, I'm really grateful. This just means a lot. That if it helps, it's for me it's the achieve. That's a huge achievement. But there are two tunes that I absolutely love for being completely different than conventional playing, because I'm coming from the rock world, and when I got into Chad Atkins and country world, and I've seen how incompatible these two worlds are, that suddenly the technique that I used for playing rock stuff completely has no application at all, and the knowledge of the fretboard is also completely upside down. That I need to flex the muscles that I didn't know that I had in my brain. But one of the two brilliant examples of playing the lines using the rolls. So first tune is of course Jerry's Breakdown. So this first run, when you listen to it, it sounds like, well, it's a blues minor pentatonic run with some notes bouncing back and forth. But because it's a finger picking tune, it's been played on an Allen string guitar. It's based on the rolls, because with finger pick, it's easier to get the clarity of this kind of run with each note is on a separate string with separate finger. So first four notes are 7th and 5th fret on first string, so there's a pull off instead of minor pentatonic run on separate fret, separate strings. There's a pull off, then it's a. Thank you so much, Sean. There's a G on 8th fret and open string. By the way, this is the tune that I learned by listening, because when I looked at the notation at the tablature, it was really hard to read, because, well, I primarily read the notes, the pitches, the black dots, and when I look at them, they look okay. There's no information of where should I play them on the neck. So when I look at them, what they mean is like, okay, it's just right, but it didn't have the sound that I heard on the record. And of course I looked at the videos, and Jerry Reed is one of the hardest guys to study and to learn, because every performance is different. He played every tune in different positions, different ways, with different articulations, which is great. I mean, I think that this is a brilliant thing. But as Chet was very consistent with his performances, Jerry was quite the opposite. Jerry was a wild man in terms of his guitar playing and everything else. But this the fingering and the positions that I came up with for this particular tune. This first four notes. So pull off second string, 8th fret, open first string. I shift to G sharp on 9th fret and back to open string. Okay, sorry. Open string, F sharp. Okay, just because there's a run of intervals in here. And I think this is brilliant, because we have cascading thirds, da 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 da, and they are played differently in every case. Sometimes it's fretted notes, sometimes it's a fretted note and an open string, sometimes two open strings. So let's have a look at it again. Oh, sorry. This is the first phrase. It's been been a while since I played this tune, so sorry for for being sloppy there, because this is not something that I play on a regular basis at all. Okay, so up until this point, let's see what's going on. Pull off. Then there's there's this minor third, 7th and 8th fret on second and second and third string. First and second open. And next two notes is D on 7th fret and okay. Am I back? Because I lost my connection. I hope okay. I hope everyone's still here. Okay. So there's this first descending run. And there's an ascending run for A major chord, which uses 7th fret on D string, open second, 6th fret on 3rd string, hammer on, open second string. So this is open. We ended up on open string. Then it's hammer on 7th and 8th, 7th and 8th fret of 2nd string. So what was next? So it was just bouncing G, G, E, G, open string, F sharp, open string, 5th, 6th, and 5th, 2nd, 3rd string, and open E. So. Thanks, Ed. So that's one of the tunes. I think we could make it the whole live stream just on this tune. And actually, I have the backing track on my channel for this tune because when I practiced it, I wanted to have a nice practicing backing, and I just put it up on the channel. Another tune that uses similar idea, but it was way later, is Hot Wired by Brent Masons, which is almost contemporary. I think it was 90s. Okay, I'm back. I didn't do anything. All right. So Brent Mason's Hot Wired goes like this. So that's roughly the A section and B section, and there's a similar thing going. Sounds like a minor pentatonic run, but what actually it is, it's spread over the strings because it's being played with a thumb pick. So A and the G on 1st and 2nd string, open E. Open E, E flat on 4th fret, pull off, C on third string, hammer on to C sharp. Mhm. And the open string run, but because there is a broken phrase, and this thing is a little bit easier to grasp the phrasing with a metronome or the backing track. So what we could do tomorrow, I could maybe break this one down because it's really fun to play, and there are some technical challenges in there that are, I think, worth having a look. And of course, for the finger picking things, the double stops and splitting between strings is like it's basically very I wouldn't say easy, but it's the best in terms of sound and articulation. So the tricky bit is those two notes which are split onto the index finger and a thumb pick. So yep, something that I'll be happy to elaborate on tomorrow in terms of this sort of country-ish licks. I don't have I don't have too many of those, but the ones that I use I'm comfortable with, and I don't like to play with ready-made licks. I want to come up with something. I want to improvise for real. If I want to solo, I want to keep the style, but I don't want to emulate because I mean the guys that invented the style had way more of musical vocabulary than I'll ever have, and they were great at it. So I can just try to maybe get into the vibe of certain style and keep it there, and or maybe throw it from time to time somewhere. So yeah, I'll be really happy to show a couple of those, and I think what we could do. Uh, uh, I think that another big thing that I'd like to talk about is in general how to solo, how to build solos, where to look for, what to pay attention to, how to play through the chord progressions, how to cope with the chords that change really fast, how to improvise on certain things that where for example we have the key changing, like soloing on cannonball rag is it's a quite a demanding thing because we have dominant chords that are shifting and progressing to different keys, starting on E, then going to A, to D, to G. So we need to connect these keys, these tensions in some logical ways, and I have couple of tricks that I'd love to show in terms of playing improvised solo on this progression, because it's a great progression. It's like it's almost like Limehouse Blues, but twice as fast, or Sweet Georgia Brown, or one of these tunes. So yeah, it's plenty of fun. Thank you so much for everyone that showed up. I'm really honored. I'm really grateful for all the donations. It really helps a lot, as basically all my work is out the window till I don't really know when. So I'll try to hang in there. And again, all right, thanks so much, everyone, and hopefully see you all all of us tomorrow, probably around the same time, which is 8 UTC, 9 uh, Great British Standard, Great British Summertime, and it's 5 hours less. It's 5 hours, 5 hours back towards the Eastern East Coast time, I guess. So it's 9 p.m. here, and it's 5 in New York. All right, take care, guys. Thank you so much.